Welcome to this live stream. You could say coming from New Zealand, but maybe most definitely coming from the heart. Welcome to whatever you receive from this live stream. It's kind of strange in many ways to sit in front of a camera when what I am is enjoying being. And there are people in this room where we are in New Zealand. And as you can see, I'm in no rush whatsoever, even to start this thing. Apparently, I was just told I'm about 20 to 25 minutes late. I don't really know what that means. As anybody that kind of knows this one, I don't really know what that means, to be late. It's not that there's not time, you know, this spiritual idea that there's not time, of which I myself have spoken about. It's just that I'm on time. How about you? Are you on time? Of course, we're not talking about this time here on this left wrist. It's just clear that I'm on time. Of course, sometimes we believe we're late, and sometimes we look at the watch and we see we're on time. And when we have a sense of awakening to that's beyond time, in the experience of breathing, really, in the experience of this life, when we really get a sense of a deeper calling and a deeper presence of meaning for awareness to have form, then we see that in a real way, everything is on time. Everything is on time, like this idea of birth is on time. And this idea of death is on time. And of course I understand that I might be speaking to you very strangely. I admit I'm very strange, in that I know there's no such thing as time, and yet I know I'm on time. Again, I put that to you. Is this on time? So I'd like to introduce myself to you. Let me put this another way. I'd like to introduce you to you. Is this on time, or are we struggling to understand what's being said here? When we look at another, are we not knowing ourselves? When we're in the experience, as speaking to us all as aware beingness, are we not knowing what we are? And are we not knowing the experience of what we're in? And are we knowing, is this too many questions? Are we also knowing what we're in the unseen? While we seem to be standing in what has form. You see, I might start this off, this is just the way it's happening. This might seem a little strange the way I'm putting this, but this is how it is at this moment. I often sit and just in daily life, and this is how it comes out. I know I'm coming and speaking to myself beyond the sense of form. And I know it moves, the unseen moves, and here it is moving as this moment that's on time. And that this movement is moved by no body. But you could say moved by the void. Acting, moving. And within that void or awareness, being, there is this experience of someone present. There is this experience of other. And there is this experience of movement, in fact, much movement. And that if I use the word we, what we are is void acting. Or, I use or very openly, just pointing to the possibilities of knowing. The unseen levels of reality known as awareness, that sense of known or knowing, not in sense perception, but known in the spaciousness or in the openness that I point towards the heart. That all of this, the entire cosmos really, is coming out of a tiny little dot. And appearing as formed movement and a beingness of awareness that relates to the forms of mental, emotional, psychological, social, sexual experience as separate from what's now appearing on your screen. I say that because I have, but I say that because I recently went to another city in New Zealand, and well, actually it wasn't a city, it was a very small village or town, and a very small cinema with a reasonably large screen. And I and another had the entire cinema to ourselves. And clearly we were sitting in a space, and what was being screened was this movie. Have you ever had the feeling that this is the movie? And the light of intelligence by which you know yourself, which you know another, which you know my body has pain, which you know I'm feeling, which you know I'm thinking, which you know forming, which you know movement, and which you can know seeming past or seeming future, is the same light that's knowing it knows deeper than what's being screened. It's knowing the self, the one who is knowing this moment of knowing I am aware. Now, of course, or not of course, God, I'm sounding like Shakespeare now, to be or not to be. This is quite something to take in. To come to the true knowledge and knowing that this moment is being screened. And all the appearances, you and I and these people in this room and the water I can hear in the background, and even the sound of the refrigerator in the far corner. Is the streaming of awareness knowing it knows, and it's knowing itself, reality itself. Understand, I'm speaking to you immediately and directly, not as someone sitting at a desk looking at a screen, or even somebody that I know. I'm having the audacity to speak to you as knowing itself, or knowing I know. If we look at this, and we'll evolve this as we move along in whatever this is as we move along. Just to give you an indication that I have quite a few questions here that I will read to you. I'm suggesting to you as myself that you never do not know. Most of us, we think we know objects as a subject. Most of us, when we know, we're knowing thoughts or feelings belonging to a particular sense of self, and we know what happened yesterday, and we believe we know what will happen tomorrow, and we believe we know each other from knowing or reflections of past activity. But is that the truth? Does this conditional realm just imply conditions? Or does this conditional realm redirect the knower to its pure knowing, and the realization of the knower in its pure knowing? So that whatever happens in this life, awareness knows it knows more than the conditional experiences presented in what seems to be, in sense perception, in terms of thoughts, feelings, activities, manifestations, conditional experiences. But does this conditional realm of experiences point to the unconditional knowing of the knower, that knows it knows and knows its awareness knowing it knows, and that it's not actually knowing things, it's simply knowing its own light of profound reality. On this level of that brightness, even though there's no sun shining here, for it is late evening, and there might be sun where you're shining, but is that the brightness? Or is the brightness the knowing that I know? Is the brightness awareness knowing it knows, and it's not knowing or projecting things that it's knowing? It simply knows it's knowing its own brightness, its own knowing, its own profundity with no beginning or end. And yet here it appears as formed persons or bodies or selves. And it appears to be separate or divided. And it seems that awareness, knowing, on this level is in division and separate. And it seems here that everything is conditional, implying that the knower of the condition is itself conditional. I'm trusting or not trusting, I didn't need to trust, that you're getting my gist. That there's not one single form of experience or movement that doesn't point you back to the deeper knowing of what you already are as the self or as being. And that as awareness awakens out of the conditional response to this moment of activity, the conditional response to this moment of related to the outside as a subject to objects or others, that as we really awaken, whatever that means. Notice I'm not pointing towards, I'm not going to form that meaning for you, other than meaning is here right now. Meaning is listening right now. Meaning is knowing right now. That as awareness awakens to its deeper knowing, which seems to be in the experience of conditional form, the knowing of the condition actually points to the knower or the self or the being directly, and doesn't point out into the conditionality, which is actually, as it were, formed and arising in awareness itself. But as awareness has moved in a relationship so much with being a somebody, being in the need of conditional sense of being a somebody, eventually awareness doesn't find any fulfillment in remaining conditional. It begins to see that the conditions, it all gets reversed, point towards the unconditional knowing of the knower of the condition that starkly reflects the unconditional. Did I get too active then? That these opposites of experience always point to that has no opposite, the knowing, the light of knowing, awareness itself. So then polarities, when one is truly awakening, whatever that means, polarities point to singularity of the one who knows, deeper than the sense experience. And as it were, in that moment, this is just pointers, in that moment, awareness has the opportunity to come from a deeper level of its own awareness in the unseen, knowing it knows an unconditional level or a pure level of its being. That the contrast of the conditional sense of self, as it were, once not having any or so much value anymore, awareness awakens to a deeper knowledge or a deeper knowing that's not an object, but a pure knowing of a deeper reality of being, not formed, not two, not subject and object, but pure beingness, no other. And that whilst awareness has form, the growing ability for awareness to move the deeper level of its knowing to the surface of forming, bringing the deeper level of knowing into formed aware movement and relatedness is truly possible. That whilst awareness is so fixed on trying to fix the conditions that always have pointed towards the unconditional knower of the condition, that all this is source energy, or all this is pure awareness, and this conditional level is an outer form of its radiance. Then awareness awakening to its knowing or its self, capital S, its pure being, just by knowing and response to the deeper level within the relatedness of the surface form. So here we have bodies, but in the manner in which I'm pointing towards, we are no body. I remember saying this, and I'm going to kind of introduce time here, many years ago, roughly around about 30 years ago. I said to a group of people, I am a nobody. Caused quite a stir. But essentially, awareness is not a body. That bodies or forms or appearances arise in awareness and form in awareness and are activated, and movements of awareness of its own reality of knowing forming itself. Essentially, no body is a body. That's why we don't freak out when we go into sleep. We don't freak out when we're in deep, dreamless sleep, because essentially we're pure awareness, knowing it knows. So you know you slept well. Did you sleep? Or did you simply return into the screen from which all this is being screened? The ground of being itself. Is this level of form that is appearing on the screen now, and here we are, having the ability to speak to each other as the self? At least that's the opportunity. Through the conditional forms, meaning they change and they pass away, but they're all in the right condition for the unconditional to realize itself and move the forms as its self, with no beginning and end. That this life and when I say this life, I'm not speaking of life as a someone or as something that has a beginning and end. This life has no beginning and end. This life that I am, this I that's listening right now to these words, is the self revealing itself on every level of its expression. Here it has form. And no matter what is taking place, this is a level of bright reality, formed, moving. But no body is actually here as a separate entity of knowing. Now, of course, I appreciate that this might sound completely ridiculous. And it seems to take quite some time to get this or understand this. But I'm not pointing for any body to get this, because no body can get this. But awareness can realize it is this. And that all this, so we're just speaking of the surface realm of form, and persons and activities and movements from those seeming persons. That this realm of humanness moves by the grace of pure beingness, regardless of how things look and how we as appearing individuals experience this in a divided secular manner, if we do. Now I'm kind of saying that if you're listening to this, in some manner you're awakening to you being aware, knowing, in whatever way that is. I'm just saying it the way I'm saying it, and from whoever this is, experience of awareness, knowing, and having form, and being in the experience of form, its movement, its intelligence, and its experience. Yet when we're awakening, we awaken to an opportunity to knowingly relate to a deeper level of knowing, although for our surface relationships it doesn't seem to relate to how we've known ourselves or each other. I'm going to say that once again. That when awareness awakens to a deeper level of the unseen, there's nothing relatable there to how awareness put together its separate sense of self. It's individuating consciousness as a someone, as a person. There's not much relatedness when we awaken, when awareness awakens to a deeper level that seems to or does shatter all the relationships where we, as awareness, relate to the human sphere of life from the past and the need for the future and the need to have certain conditional types of experience that we can relate and identify to. Well, what a mouthful that was, right? So what we're looking at, let's say, in this live stream, this conversation, is our ability as awareness to know what it is deeper than a sense of self, and relate to the deeper knowing that becomes, I'm going to call it knowable in the deep, but has no relationship to how we put our surface forms together, but has a relationship to our calling to awaken, to the profounder knowing that I am. This is the I that's listening to these words now, please. To know that I am reality itself, multi-dimensional in nature, and on the surface, this form, because we're speaking of this humanness, this formness, at the moment we are, on the surface to realize that this awareness that is knowing this moment as a nobody is creating all these forms. That all this is arising in our awareness. All this is forming, moving, acting, relating, but also evolving. Maybe even understanding, but an understanding with no end. And that this surface life gives awareness the opportunity to, as awareness, responding to the deeper knowing, to form, not as a separate sense of self, it just happens to respond to the deeper level, to form the deeper level. The deeper level forms through the response of awareness to its being. And that very response empties out the forms of our known experience. That very response, the relatedness to what is unseen and deeper, empties out the conditional relatedness we have to our sense of self, our sense of person, our sense of reality really, and our sense of each other. That's the infinity symbol. This level empties its patterning, and the unseen level pours in, forming a new reality of the surface, forming the level on which awareness responded to, and begins to integrate the deeper knowing of awareness awakening to its profundity into surface experience or human experience. Therefore, as we truly awaken, much moves and changes in our relatedness on the surface. We discover, so I'm speaking to each and every one of us as awareness itself, beingness itself. We discover the undoing of all our conditional belief systems, that the holding on to the belief in patterning, in humanness, in relatedness, how we hold on to being a somebody. Where if you just look when you were a young baby, a young child, you were a nobody. Within that nobody moving, body or form formed around your innocence of being. And so the innocence of being, or void, was acting. And how pure that is, how beautiful that is, how real that is, how love actually moves.